Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our vegetable garden. We live in Spokane, Washington, where the hardiness zone ranges from 5B to 6A. Would you like to grow bug-free broccoli? I have got it down to a science, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. I know a lot of gardeners get frustrated when they try to grow broccoli or other types of cabbage family crops because, quite frankly, they are bug magnets. They get aphids. They get cabbage worms. Slugs love to feast on the leaves. It is enough to make a gardener cry. But there are such simple ways to keep these insects away from your plants using two different methods. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I do not use chemicals, and there's no reason to. You just need to use a couple little tricks. Now, first of all, I'm growing Bell Star broccoli again. I grew it for the first time last year, and oh my gosh, it is so prolific, and the heads are huge, both the primary heads and the secondary heads, which are also known as side shoots. As a matter of fact, we're still eating them because I froze a bunch last year, and they are fabulous. So I heartily recommend this variety. Now, I started these indoors from seed a few weeks ago, and today I finally get to plant them. This is the bed where I'm going to grow the broccoli, and all I did to prepare it was to add some organic composted chicken manure to the surface of the soil. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I try to disturb the soil as little as possible, and that's because there's all sorts of beneficial microorganisms living at different levels within the soil, so I don't want to disturb them. And because I'm planting seedlings, all I have to do is make a hole where each seedling goes, and that's all there is to it. I'm going to grow 8 plants altogether in this bed. Last year I grew 11 in the same size bed, and it was getting a little crowded because these plants are very vigorous. I started the broccoli seedlings in these Epic Gardening recycled plastic 4-cell 4-inch deep seed starting trays, and I am so sold on them because I will never have to replace them. They are that tough. No more flimsy seed trays for me. So what I want to do very quickly is to pop them out of their cells and lay them on the bed where I think they should go, and I want to plant them quickly so their root systems don't dry out. To plant the seedling, make a hole that's the same depth as the root system. Put it into the hole and then press the soil around it so there aren't any air pockets. And by the way, how do you like my lovely new gloves from Garden Like a Girl? They are so comfy. Okay. Next step is to water them in because transplanting can be a bit stressful. The next step is to feed these little plant babies a high nitrogen fertilizer. And if you recall from my fertilizer basics video, the first number on packages of fertilizer represents the percentage of nitrogen. And if you look at this package of fish fertilizer, you can see it says 511, so that means it's high in nitrogen. And I am going to feed them again the same type of fertilizer in about 2 weeks. When I use fertilizer, I put it on the soil, because that's where the roots are going to pick it up. I don't want to put it on the foliage. Now let's start addressing the bug issues and what I do to keep them away. So I want to start with slugs first. And the thing that you need to know about slugs, which is kind of unusual, is that their skin reacts electrically with copper. They want nothing to do with it. So Bill and I came up with an idea of making little barriers that go around the base of the plants, and it has worked so well for us, so I wanted to share this with you. I also want to mention it is a DIY project in my book, The Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook, in case you want to check it out from your library or pick it up from Amazon. The first thing we did is we bought some Corey's Copper Slug and Snail Tape Barrier from our garden center. It's really easy to find. You can also find copper foil tape on Amazon and other online sources. What Bill did is he took a scrap piece of 3-inch diameter plastic drain pipe and cut them into rings that are 1.5 inches tall each. We attached the copper tape to the outer perimeter of the rings, and you would not believe how long the tape lasts, because you'll see some of the rings that I'm using today have foil tape on them that is a few years old, and yet it still repels the slugs. To put the rings in place, the first thing I do is I look at a seedling to see if there are any leaves that are either hanging down to the surface or look like they will be touching the surface later, because that would be an easy way for slugs to get up into the plant. So I'm just going to snip off this lowest leaf, and now I just carefully put this over the top of the seedling and place it on the soil surface, making sure all parts of it are touching the soil so that the slugs can't sneak in underneath. Here's another one that I'm suspicious of, and I'm going to carefully put this over the leaves, down on the soil surface. You would not believe how well this works. Okay, so that takes care of the slugs. What about the aphids and cabbage worms? Well, the great news is there's only one thing I need to do that will keep both of them away. I need to put hoops over the bed and use either floating row cover or agricultural insect netting. So let me show you both. Here's what floating row cover looks like. It is a woven fabric that lets sunlight and moisture through it, so if it were to rain, the plants would still get watered underneath. And it acts as a physical barrier to keep aphids and cabbage worms and other types of insects away from the plants. It's very easy to find both at garden centers and online. Now, in last week's video, I showed you these 2 hinged raised bed covers, and they are both covered with agricultural insect netting. I first started using it last year, and I am so sold on it because it's very durable, and look how easily you can see through it to see how plants are doing. Well, we only have 2 of those, so I'm going to put hoops over the broccoli bed and place the agricultural insect netting on top of that. If you're new to my videos, you're probably wondering what these white pipes are all about. So these are just short pieces of PVC pipe. I think they're 3/4 inch diameter, and they're clamped to the sides of each bed at 2-foot intervals. And that is so that no matter where we plant something that needs some insect protection, I always have supports for the hoops. Well, I'm going to be using taller hoops because broccoli plants get quite tall. So this is just a piece of plastic pipe that I'm inserting in here so that it will support the large hoops. I'm going to do one just to show you how this works. It's pretty cool. So this is black poly sprinkler pipe, and it just goes over that, and there is a hoop. The important thing you want to remember when purchasing any type of a row cover is that you want to take into account width-wise how much will go up and over the hoops, and also how much will go from the ground at the end up and over and back down to the ground on the other side. So make sure you get a large enough piece. You don't want to have any openings where those sneaky insects can get through. Gather each end together and weigh it down with bricks or boards so that it will stay in place. And weight down the long sides to keep insects out. Now that you've seen floating row cover and agricultural insect netting, you might think, gee, that works so great, I should put it over all of my garden. No, you don't need to do that. Cabbage family crops are plagued with insects, just like I was explaining, and so they are a perfect candidate. They do not bloom, so they don't need pollinators, and so this is an ideal solution. I love when I can use exclusion, as in keeping insects away from plants, rather than having to use even an organic product. And this works really great for cabbage family crops. You also will recall that I have used it over Swiss chard and beets. They are members of the beet family. They're susceptible to leaf miner flies. So the covers are an ideal solution for them. But it's just a handful of crops that this is really ideal for. And boy, broccoli is one of them. So what's next for these little broccoli plants? Well, first of all, I'm going to monitor them regularly to make sure they're growing okay. I'll make sure there aren't any leaves bending over and touching the soil so that the slugs can't sneak up on the plants without going by the copper rings. And I'm also going to fertilize them with more Alaska fish fertilizer in 2 weeks. Now, a couple of other tips that I have for you are, first of all, to always rotate your crops and clean up crop residue at the end of each growing season. That's to prevent cabbage worms from overwintering on the plant debris. I also like to compost cabbage family crops at the end of the season, but I don't want any late season cabbage butterflies or moths to find it, so I always bury the crop residue in our compost pile so they can't lay eggs on the leaves. Yep, you sure have to be sneaky with them. Now that you know how to grow broccoli and other cabbage family crops without all those pesky bugs, I hope you'll give them a try in your garden. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening.